Hey there, it's Nick Terzo, and this is the Radical Podcast. No, we won't be overthrowing any governments, but we will be learning from radical creatives who rule the world. Hey there, I'm Nick Terzo, and this is The Radical. Good show this week. My guest is Grammy nominee Rufus Wainwright. Rufus is a font of creativity, having released 10 studio albums, including his very latest, Unfollow The Rules. Additionally, he has created 2 operas, Prima Donna and Hadrian. He has contributed to many film soundtracks and collaborations with other artists, such as Robbie Williams, Renee Zellweger, and Sam Smith. Rufus continues being uber productive in our virtual world with his weekly show, Rufus Retro Wainwright Spective. And he has an upcoming show on December 20th, A Not So Silent Night, in which he performs with Martha and Lucy Wainwright, benefiting the Kate McGarrigle Foundation. Rufus is also nominated this year for a Grammy for Best Traditional Pop Vocal Album. Coming up next, my chat with Rufus Wainwright. Hello, Rufus. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for doing this. It's a long overdue walk through the park we have to do.
Certainly. No, and I think we're both in good places to do that because it's been too long.
It has been too long. So we have a new record out called Unfollow The Rules. It came out earlier this year.
Yes.
You got it in just prior to all the lockdowns happening. I mean, what would your year look like had this COVID thing not?
Yeah, I mean, we finished recording it before lockdown. I mean, I was working on it for about 3 years, and it was actually, the songs on the album are really a compilation of about 10 years worth of songwriting, because in that interim time I was working mostly in the opera world, so I had a lot to write about alone in my, kind of cubicle, when dealing with classical people. So there was a lot of material. Made the record with Mitchell. Was going to release it in, I think it was going to be in April, and then we moved it to June because the pandemic hit, and so there was a little bit of a lapse. But I guess if it had come out at the time that it was supposed to, and there wasn't this pandemic, I was supposed to be in like Australia now or something. I had like about 3 or 4. I was going to do Glastonbury this year. I had a really good slot set there on the main stage, and I was going to do Fuji Rock, which I'd never done before. So there was a lot that was going to happen. But that being said, I mean, I'm just join the club.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Precisely. And so the record's been, I mean, have you been nominated for the Grammy, or is the record in the best traditional pop vocal? It's an album. It's the record though, isn't it?
It's the album, because I'm pretty sure that if I win, which would be great, knock on wood, I make no qualms about wanting to win.
Why should you?
But if I do, I know that Mitchell Froome and David Boucher, who mixed it, they'll get little Grammys too. So I think it's for the album.
Oh, that's all. And this is like your second, right? Did you have something when you did the Judy Garland stuff?
My Judy Garland album was nominated, and I remember when that happened, and may she rest in peace. I was also nominated with Natalie Cole was nominated at the same time for another album, and I remember watching like Entertainment Tonight or something, and there was a whole expose on her, on her battle with I think she had like kidney disease or something for years, or hepatitis or something. And I was like, there goes my Grammy.
Well, what illness would you like to announce today? We can kind of get the sympathy vote.
I have PTSD. No, I'm doing okay. I mean, I do feel like this time around, there's more of a shot. I think it's a bit of a long shot, because there's other people, like, I mean, there's there's James Taylor, and there's Burt Bacharach, there's Harry Connick Jr. There's the other one too. There's Renee Zellweger, who I know quite well, but she's up for her Judy record, and
how weird.
I know. So if she wins for her Judy record, then I'll be. I mean, I won't hold it personally against her, but that would be a tale.
No more Judy Garland for you,
I
pal.
know.
That'll be the mark.
I upset the forces that be.
Well, the record, I mean, is fantastic, and I mean, it really is. I mean, if you're going to talk about a pop vocal album,
Yeah.
I mean, the way you're working through that with your voice, I mean, it's just some really great performances and really different in a way. When I listened to Devils and Angels, I thought, oh, this is a little maudlin, and then you get to that chorus part, it's almost like the bridge. It's a chorus, it's a bridge. It's so beautiful and such a nice return to pop in that. So it's an unusual song.
Yeah. No, I'm particularly happy with that one, especially because when we first started producing it, it was sounding a little bit too much like, whatever, the Phantom of the Opera. Was getting very kind of like theatrical, and but then we managed to kind of steer it into more of a kind of Blade Runner direction, which I was more happy with. So yeah. I mean, I owe a lot on this record to Mitchell Froom. I mean, he really was incredibly. I mean, on one hand, he was very, very supportive and an obvious fan, and really has a lot of respect for me. But on the other hand, he was very, I don't know, exacting about just getting what needed to be done, and then really getting rid of a lot of superfluidity.
Yes.
And making it kind of very clear, which is really the job of a producer in a lot of ways.
Right. And speaking of that, I mean, you come off of having the opera work you've been doing, right, which is so involved and such a, I don't know how you do it. We'll get to that. But is it a challenge to write like within the confines of like trying to do a 3-minute pop song? When you come from that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always, as you know, I've always kind of skipped between both worlds. Opera was always a big influence of mine, and I did very early on clock the concept of adding ingredients from that world into my pop creations, and I knew also that you had to be accessible for a mainstream audience, so I was able to kind of measure it. But I will say that having actually in the meantime gone off and written a couple of operas and really gotten my feet wet in that world, that it's a whole other sensibility. It's interesting because I'm actually I won't get into it too much because it hasn't been finalized yet, but there's something that I will be doing where I will be talking about this weird relationship between opera and pop that I think I'm kind of the only person who really knows about like so innately, and that I think people will be kind of curious to hear about, because they're very, very different, and and few people understand each one of them.
Yeah, I'm just curious how you swing. It's so to speak. But I mean, do you kind of feel in a way that on the pop side, when you're doing a pop thing, do you kind of get in your own way sometimes? Or do you overcomplicate some of the arrangements and have to be pulled back?
Yeah, I mean, I could be accused of sort of compromising myself in a pop, in my pop ventures occasionally. One of my favorite stories, actually, and I think we were working together at the time. It was when I was doing Poses, and or I just finished, and I was living with, or I don't know, I was there, or something, but I was this. I don't know if we were, but I was hanging out with Bijou Phillips, and the crazy Bijou Phillips, wonderful Bijou Phillips, and we were driving down the street. It was quite late at night, and I was playing her parts of Poses, and I was so excited because I was like, "This is my pop record, this is my." And she started laughing uproariously. She's like, "This isn't pop at all, Rufus." Like, I think that my idea of pop is just not what pop is. But when I'm in the moment, I really believe my kind of own delusion. And the world seems to have, put up with that for a while.
Well, on You Ain't Big, though, I thought you were, it's amazing that song because you're so present in that song. It's
Yes.
such a, it feels like such a song we all kind of need right now when we can't go anywhere.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
It was a fantastic song for that. It was so uplifting in a way.
Well, in a funny way with that song, and this is something that I do have, kind of, I think, a more solid knowledge of is, roots, folk, kind of maybe a bit of country. I grew up with Emmylou Harris and like physically, she would come to our house, and Linda Ronstadt and stuff. So it's sort of, I think if I want another Grammy, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to just have to make a roots American record and win 5.
Yeah. Dude, you got to do the Laurel Canyon record.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, you would be so great at just doing that California sound full on.
There's a bit of that in this record with like damsel in distress in certain tracks, but we got to figure this out.
You'll figure it out. So you've got a bunch of stuff coming up that I kind of want to mention so we don't get too sidetracked on this. You've got the Rufus, Martha, and Lucy's Not So Silent Night coming up, which benefits your mom's foundation, right? Kate McGarrigle Foundation.
Yes.
And that's on the 20th, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, we're doing kind of separate sessions, I'm doing one here in LA with some family here, and then then there's one in Montreal, and my dad and my Lucy are doing some in New York. And so then we're just going to chop them up and it'll be a virtual Christmas offering. I mean, it's I felt it was really important to just have something this year because we're kind of at the end of our tether here.
Yes.
And so
where will that be available? Where will that be available?
It's going to be on Veeps, which is where I do my Rufus retro Wainwright spective. I'm doing all my albums.
That's coming right in January.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing that.
You've been doing it.
Yeah, I've been doing. I'm now at one. I've done like 3 albums so far around. So I'm doing that, and that's in lieu of touring. That's so I can just make some money. And
is that weekly?
It's weekly, yeah, every Friday.
Wow.
Every Friday I do half an album.
That's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's fun actually. I mean, because I also have a celebrity guest, and so we started out with Jamie Lee Curtis and Chris Guest. They were my first guests, and then we had Darren Criss for another one, and then we had Joel McHale for another one. So I have a tiny audience, like 1 or 2 people, and so it's just a nice way to spend it.
Lies, but does Joel McHale sing actually?
I wouldn't be surprised. He looks like he's kind of Mr. Superman. What he likes to do is bring knives to my house. For my 8-year-old daughter, 9-year-old daughter. It's kind of his joke. He brings her like switchblades as a gift.
Nice, fantastic. Why not? So, on the opera front, I mean, your first opera was Prima Donna, yes?
Yeah. And by the way, Prima Donna, they just did an amazing production of it in Sweden.
Really?
That's available on YouTube. You can see it.
And who did it? They're like opera company and
the Swedish Royal Opera Company, which is a beautiful old. Yeah, no, they did it because they had different rules in Sweden, right?
Were you able to go or not?
I went to some rehearsals. I wasn't able to go to but there's a very good version of it online now.
Yeah, I have to see that.
Yeah.
How many other people have actually performed that opera? Where is it?
There's been 7 other productions. It was done in Budapest and New York and in Toronto and London. So it's been done. It's turning out to be a little bit of a dark horse classic. It seems to be coming back, that opera.
Were people welcoming, or did you take kind of abuse from that community? Is that community closed-minded?
Oh, no, that community is God. I mean, you think the pop world is bad in terms of, I mean, but I think the pop world is probably worse in terms of like, the establishment and send like record companies, and I mean some of the shit that we've been through with dealing with managers, record companies, agents. It's pretty brutal. But in terms of like the press, they're nothing compared to the classical music press. The classical music press, it's like they just relish and annihilating people. So they tried to do that to me. They tried, but they obviously didn't succeed.
Yeah, didn't stick. How
No, it
long?
didn't.
How long did you work on that?
Oh, that was about 7 years. I worked on that. It really began. The ideas were around for about 4 years, and then for 3 years, I really composed it. And that was sadly, I really started, working wholeheartedly on it when my mother got sick, when Kate got sick, my mother, and thankfully she got to see it, but she died, not long after composing that. So that was I think it was a great, I wouldn't say great, but it was a fortuitous coincidence because I was able to just sort of focus on the opera and not on, what was happening
Yeah.
with my mother.
Uh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that. I know how close you guys were, and
Yeah, no, I
she's
know.
a good
I know.
woman. Good
She really
woman,
loved
gone too soon.
she really liked you a lot. She was excited.
No, she was a lovely, lovely person, my friend. So even with all the shit you dragged her through in your adolescence. uh, and do you have another opera? This Hadrian opera, is that new?
Yes,
Is that
Adrian. Yeah, that got produced right before, a few months before COVID, thankfully, in October of last year. Uh, and that was in Toronto. And there was actually also a wonderful live stream of that production that came out during COVID. So it was just ironic because like during COVID, all of my tours were canceled, all of my studio time, this and that. And then, but I had two operas that were produced, it was surreal to have that happen. So yeah, and that we're looking for to mount once things chill out a little bit.
was that an easier process for you doing a second one than the first?
No, it was a much bigger piece. I mean, it was
Hmm.
it's Hadrian, so it's like the Roman Empire, and there's choruses and ballets, and it's a more challenging uh score, but it's
Lots of
you know
lutes and stuff. Lute,
well, there's lots of harp,
harp,
lots
and
of harp,
lutes.
harp,
I mean, were
harp,
you
and
historically
yeah.
aware enough of that?
Yeah, well, I did a lot of research for years. I mean, actually, Hadrian was the first opera that I wanted to compose, but I didn't feel I had the ability or the knowledge to do that. So I kind of focused on Prima Donna first, which was a simpler story. But I eventually did conquer the Roman Empire, and now I have to figure out my next victim.
And I mean, like when you're developing that, I mean, is that just a full on solo practice for you, or do you have help? I mean, is there arrangers? How do you do this?
No, I mean, I have when I get down to work, after I've really figured out the story and the libretto, and even the libretto won't be figured out right away. That'll take that can actually coincide. But I have an assistant who I work with, and we do it on computers, and it's very much I am responsible for every note in the score. Like I work with them like 8 hours a day most of the time, and really kind of toil through the minutia of it. So but I am enabled to do it because of technology. I mean, I think I wouldn't be able to sit down and just be alone and take a score. And I mean, maybe I could if I really wanted to. I could, but also having a pop career and being a singer, like you can't do everything. But with computers and certain programs like Sibelius and the Vienna sounds, I can just map it out sonically, and then I know. I mean, I know how to read music and I know how to read a score. But I do have an assistant. It's a bit for me. I equate it with the phenomenon of painters from the all the master painters from, you know, the Renaissance and stuff. They always had like 10 assistants. They didn't go and paint everything. You have people come in and help. So I'm not averse to having help. Which, by the way, when I started, and now they don't talk about it as much, but I was very much accused, you know, by the press, like, oh, he didn't do any of this. You know, he hired someone to like do it for him, and it was like,
have they ever read any of your history and your interest? Ridiculous.
Anyway.
That is crazy. You're not like exactly Justin Bieber starting to do an opera. I mean, it's weird.
I know.
So weird. Kind of like you've kept very busy during this time at home. I mean, these lovely live performances you're doing, and I mean, what's next creatively for you? Like,
yeah, well, I'm you know, as I said, you know, I am going to be coming to Nashville just to do maybe a show at the City Winery there. It has been announced. We'll see, socially distanced or, you know, smaller capacity. We'll see how things go. So there's like touring is kind of inching out very, very carefully. So there's that. Then there's also, you know, living in LA, there's just a ton of movies and television ideas. You know, I think I have like 20 big movies that I'm making now, you know, which is very LA. You know, we'll see what actually happens. But there's always something to kind of latch onto here. And so I'm doing that. And then, and I would, you know, there's a lot of talk about finally Rufus Wainwright writing a musical,
right.
Just a good old Broadway musical. And certainly now with what's going on in Broadway, it's a good time to sort of work, you know, think long term. Like, you know, it always takes 5 years for a musical to be produced. So now's a good time to do that because there will be a desire.
Yeah. It's a natural evolution for you that has to happen. So
sometimes those are the hardest ones. The most obvious ones can be the toughest.
Well, the expectations are going to be off the roof for that one. So, do you still do a lot of like film work or not so much?
You know, not really. I mean, I'm not averse to it. I think in a lot of ways I was somewhat traumatized by my father. not by, I mean, I was traumatized by him in many ways as a father, but more in this respect. He is an actor, and he doesn't act so much anymore. But I really witnessed him like get so discouraged, you know, after certain auditions and not getting certain parts and being like, I don't know. It was really because he wanted to be an actor. Like he studied acting and at Carnegie, and he's a very good actor. But it was I just being in that jungle. I don't know. Really gave me pause. But I did do some, you know, as you know, and I'm not adverse to it. But I'm not going to go out and chase around for that.
Right. That makes
Especially
perfect.
When you get older, when you get, you know, when you don't have the brazen, youthful. No sharpness.
I understand. And how are you and Loudon doing these days? Your dad? Are you guys on good footing?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think what we've realized is that you know, there's a lot of I don't know. It's just important that we stay in communication, but not all the time. Like we don't. I don't know. We're just very civil, and we're very, you know, caring about each other. It's about lowering expectations and then being open to like beautiful things that happen that you don't expect, you know so it's I probably don't speak to him as much as I used to at all, but in a weird way then when we speak to each other we really miss each other, and there's not this sort of like setup. We try to like take away these setups, but I miss, you know, I miss my entire family. I haven't seen anyone like from the East Coast or.
Yeah, are they all on the East Coast, pretty much?
Pretty much, yeah. Martha's in Canada, and there's that whole Canadian contingent, and then there's, you know, all of the people in New York. So it's been it's getting weird.
Yeah, it's too long. It's too long for all of us. Like on the arrangement side of things, I mean, did that, you know, having worked earlier with like Van Dyke Parks, is that something that kind of you
Yeah.
observed transitioned into your DNA?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Van Dyke, also, John Bryan, and I was, yeah, no, I mean, I definitely, I have, it's interesting because if you do look at the, the roster or whatever of my producer credits, there's a lot of heavy hitters there. Mitchell and Mark Ronson and Van Dyke and even Lenny Waronker in a lot of ways. So it's yeah, I seem to be able to uh, actually, you know what, I do learn a lot, and I think I don't physically sit down and study it, but I'm willing to absorb, and that's actually a very important lesson, I think, for anyone starting out is to really, just be willing to listen, be willing to take in what's going on around you. And I was able to do that musically, not with other things.
Right.
Musically.
Well, the other thing I think is really great about you is, as you've continued to grow as an artist, you're still open to like letting people of that stature come in and work with you and collaborate on records. A lot of people shut that
Yeah,
down. Like, I don't want that. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's to your a tribute to you that you allow kind of talent like that in the room with you.
Yeah, no, and that's, I mean, I have to say, living in LA, that for me is one of the great advantages of just being in this place. Those people, a lot of those folks are around, people like Randy Newman and, and Burt Bacharach. I mean, they're all here, still, some of them, and I whatever, I revel in that for sure.
Yeah, LA is definitely a creative hub now, as is
Yeah,
Nashville, and New York
yeah,
is just less so.
yeah,
Sadly.
yeah, sadly,
So,
sadly.
sadly. So you've had in your life, we were wild childs at one time
Yes,
in our
yes,
earlier
yes,
relationships.
yeah,
But you've had some famous friends that have kind of come in at times and played the modern elder and given you great
yeah,
advice, whether it was Elton John or Chrissy Hind,
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
crucial moments in your life. And I mean, you must be extraordinarily grateful for those
yeah,
relationships and
yeah.
that wisdom.
Yes, yeah, no, I mean, look, I had, as you know, I mean, for those of you who don't know, on the podcast, Nick and I used to work together. You were my first manager
I was.
ever.
You used
Yeah.
to have a funny line you used to say, I think.
What did I?
I think your
Oh,
funny line was that I quit working for Madonna to work for you back then.
yes.
That was your line back then.
Well, yeah. Well, that wasn't only my line. That was Madonna's line. I mean, because I met her once, and the only thing she had to say to me was, "You stole Nick Terzo from me." That was her one. That was her one comment. So
I
anyway,
didn't think she
so
cared, but that's nice to hear. So,
yeah, she doesn't care, but then once you're stolen, she
yeah,
cares a
once you're
lot.
stolen, it's
Right?
fisticuffs.
I know. Anyways, but so yeah, so we worked together, and yeah, no, I was. I mean, I was, as you know, I was a pretty wild kid, for a few years, really, until the end of Poses, and then when Want One came around, I had to get my shit together. But that being said, I do feel that I was always willing to still, I don't know, take advice, to be to examine, or just try and seek out the better path, shall we say. And it's funny because talking with you now, and I also once again think a lot about my mother, is that I don't feel like, and you can relate to this probably, is that, I mean, I feel like people were worried about me, like they were maybe scared in a sense, because it's dangerous when you're so liberal with drugs and alcohol and being crazy. But I also feel like people didn't have the sense that I was like a nihilist. They didn't think I was going to destroy myself. Like, that wasn't the point of what I was doing. I was just searching, very intensely.
Yes.
um, but I wasn't searching for like my end, which arguably was the case for other people of my generation who did die, like someone like Kurt Cobain, or someone like Jeff Buckley, or Elliott Smith. I mean, these were men, singers, who were much more like obsessed with this kind of really dark element that I think if anything I was trying to I don't know, look for the silver lining, around that.
More
So
experimental, let's say, than
yeah, yeah.
destructive.
Yes, there you go. And then but it could be dangerous at times. So like my mother, for instance, was like she would always say, Rufus, I never was really worried about you. I knew that when push came to shove, you would do the right thing. And so she gave me that confidence. And part of that was just being open to advice from people.
Well, you always functioned at a high level and you were productive. So, I
Yeah.
think that gives people hope when that's going
Yeah.
on. It's not like you
Yeah.
withdrew and
Yeah.
that's when
Yeah.
it gets troubling.
I think that artistically it was interesting, and I learned a lot. I think that it also, there's some crappy performances out there that I did. I mean, my voice was not. There are definitely like drunken moments where I thought I was being, this, incredible being, the artistic luminary, and I just sounded like a drunk fool. So I mean, there's things that I would have done over, but not needless to say, I made it through alive, and that's what matters.
Thank heavens. We're all grateful for that you're still here. So, and early on, when we started working together, you started getting a kind of a public persona, a lot of critical acclaim.
Yeah,
So it almost became larger than like what we were able to do with the music itself and exposing it.
yeah,
And now
yeah.
do you feel like I feel like you've caught up?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have to say, I mean, this is what I said at the beginning of the interview is that I wanted to say is that a lot of this, and Kate actually told me this was due to you, in the sense that when that first record came out, even though it was not necessarily, uh, you know, a common offering, and wasn't what was on the charts and stuff, you really made an effort to like go to the mainstream. We would get on MTV, we would get, you used a lot of your contacts which were not like NPR. I mean, we all knew that I could get NPR and that because of my parents, but you really went for some big looks, which kind of worked, and it definitely, you know, injected that record with and my persona with a kind of following that didn't necessarily translate in terms of sales, but I know certainly being with DreamWorks and Lenny, and there was,
They
but
were
it was
incredibly supportive.
yeah, yeah, but it was just that was a really good period career wise for me. And Marsha,
Marsha's
everybody was,
incredible.
yeah, people were really fighting tooth and nail for me, and I'm so fortunate to have had that, and it lasted. I was able to maintain it.
That's what we'd hope for. It's what you always hope for when you're building that foundation, man. So it's awesome. So we'll wrap up here because I know you got a long day.
Yeah.
So how is like being married, having a family, having this beautiful 9-year-old? Like, how
Yes.
has that
Yes.
changed your perspective, like as an artist in a way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what can I say? I mean, it's certainly the best thing about it is that it is the simplicity now. I mean, in the sense that what matters is her, and also my relationship with my husband, and our kind of growth as a unit, and so much of my career before this and life was just so focused around me and what my needs were, and what made me happy, what satisfied me, and that was great for a while, but it does become exhausting you know after a while, and to sort of suddenly be able to shift it to like what will make this other person happy and this other person thrive, it's a tremendous relief, and a great joy, and I'm very lucky to be able to do that. But so it's a better place, but it's so different. I mean, it's funny because it kind of goes back a bit to my dad, where my father, he has his own path, and but he's never quite been able to kind of extricate himself from the equation, like people have to be very mindful about what his needs are. He's like that. He's a Virgo. You know, and it's sort of always been like, okay, Dad, you know, just we got to be careful what Dad thinks and does, and somehow the one little thing that and I think it's actually quite big with my daughter that I've been able, with Viva, our daughter, I should say, been able to really focus on is to actually take myself out of the equation and be like, you know what, I don't matter at all. She matters, and let's just, and it took some adjusting, but it's actually a tremendous relief in the end because it just makes you, I don't know, it gives you a lot of freedom suddenly.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. So,
yeah.
One last question, I'll let you go. I like to ask people what they're currently listening to that's super and great and you're really impressed with.
Yeah. Well, sadly I spent probably too much time on social media, kind of surfing around, especially these days. And there's this kid who I don't know, he's from LA, and I've been listening to his tracks. His name is Glass Battles.
Glass Battles?
Glass Battles is the name of his band or his thing. And I've just enjoyed that. I do love the new Sufjan Stevens record. Beautiful. And also kind of different from what he's been doing. I like that he's kind of getting out of that, circular guitar stuff, which is I've always adored, but it sort of got a little repetitive, and this is something different, which I think is fantastic. And then oh God, there was, I have to say I do kind of like The Weeknd.
Why not?
Yeah.
Blinding Lights is like the greatest song of the year. I can't believe the Grammys ditched him this year.
No, I mean, look, my thing with that whole situation is that I think it's terrible, but look, I've been ignored by the Grammys for my entire career, so it's like,
who did you pay off this year then? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So it's nice to, and I do think that there's a funny argument of like, okay, what about things that don't sell millions of copies? Does that mean they're not worthy for a Grammy either? I mean, like, there's two sides of this story, so, but whatever.
But I think he's fantastic too. I mean,
totally.
I wave the Canadian flag. He's great. So, well, thank you very much. You are the hardest working man in show business, I think. I can say that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Rufus has a ton of things coming up. He is always online doing his concerts every week. You should listen to the great Rufus Wainwright Spective.
Rufus Wainwright Spective, yes.
The words are in between your name. I've got it now. And any Grammy voters out there, come on. This record's really good. His performance vocally is incredible. Vote. Thank you, Rufus, very much. Stay safe.
Thank you. Okay, bye, Nick.
I can't wait to meet your family someday.
Come to me in Nashville if I come.
I will do that for sure. I'll come with a whole hazmat suit on. So
wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, that's our show this week. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned a little something. To follow what's going on with this podcast, you can go to theradicalpod.com. Theradicalpod.com. You'll find show notes and past episodes and even a little swag there if you want a t-shirt or a hat. Also, I would be honored if you'd subscribe at Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Till next week.